I thought I would jump on here and do a little sewing machine knowledge, just showing you what some of the parts are on the sewing machine for anybody that's new to sewing or anybody that has been sewing a while that doesn't know some of the parts. So I'm going to just point out some of these most common parts on a sewing machine. So first I'll start with the spool holder. It's usually on top of your machine, and you just put the spool on and it'll hold it. And the bobbin winder, you usually put your bobbin over here and you just move it over and you run your thread through this little groove here and it'll wind your bobbin. And the tension dial is right here. Some of these parts are on different places on your machine, but I'm just showing you where they're at on my machine. This is your tension dial that sets your tension for your thread, for your top thread. And if you want to do your tension for the bottom thread, it's usually on the bobbin case down here. There's a little screw right here. Sometimes the case will come out. Sometimes it stays in there. And you can just turn that screw if you take it out, and it'll adjust your tension for your bobbin. And then your stitch length is usually over here somewhere. You can adjust it with the button, or sometimes there's a little knob, kind of like the tension dial. Sometimes it's up here on top, it just depends. Stitch length is how long your stitch is. The stitch width is how wide your stitch is. You usually use the stitch width. You adjust it when you do zigzag or anything that goes back and forth. And the different stitches on this machine are all in these blue boxes. And then you have your power buttons over here on the side. Most of the power buttons are on the side that you plug your cords into, and then you have your hand wheel. And you have a speed control on this machine. You can go really slow, or you can go medium or fast. And then you have a thread cutter over here. And then there's a reverse button or back stitch that just locks your stitches. You hold it down while you're sewing and then let up to go forward again. That'll just lock your stitches in place. You lock your stitches to keep your thread from unraveling if you were to. Most people don't use it anymore because they go over the stitch again when you sew another piece to it. But if you want to use it, it just locks your stitches. That way if you have to set them over to the side, you can make sure they don't come unstitched while they're sitting there. And right here, this metal part is your needle plate. You can take that off, and that's how you clean the inside of your bobbin area. This is your bobbin area right here. You take your bobbin out, and it goes in this little slot. And then your needle is right here. Your needle screw is right here. This is how you take your needle in and out when you need to change it. The presser foot is this part that goes up and down. That's your presser foot right here. And the presser foot holder is what's holding the presser foot on. This little part right here is your presser foot holder. And then you have this little lever back here. It's a presser foot lever that lifts your presser foot up and down. And then these little metal pieces down here, they're kind of have little grooves in them. Those are your feed dogs. Your feed dogs is what pulls your fabric through the machine as you sew. And then if you take, on this machine, if you take this plate off, this is just open it up, and this has some storage in it, and you can store all your pieces. But for your feed dogs, there's a little lever right here on the bottom, and that will lower your feed dogs down, and that just helps your fabric move through the sewing machine better. That's usually used when you are quilting on this machine. So you can just maneuver your fabric without it getting caught on the feed dogs, because the feed dogs will move your fabric for you. So if you have them down, then you can freely move your fabric yourself. And then you have an automatic threader, which is right here. This will thread your needle for you. If you have your thread in there, and you just pull it down and it'll thread your needle, so you don't have to sit there and try to thread it yourself. And from this part of the machine to this side is called your throat space. That tells you if you go to anywhere to buy a sewing machine and you say you want a big throat space, that means you want this space to be longer so you can fit more of your fabric in there. And then you have these extra parts in here. Usually it'll come with some needles, a seam ripper. It'll come with some extra feet, like your walking foot, and I think that's a zipper foot. And you have some extra feet in here. One of them is a 1/4 inch foot. One's used for like different stitches, like your zigzag or anything that goes back and forth. One that gives you more room, and then there's some other parts in here. Some machines will come with a lot more parts, some will come with a lot less. It just depends on what machine you have. There's also a cleaning brush in here that I had no idea was in there. And I've had this machine for almost 10 years. So there's all kinds of stuff that comes with it.
This particular machine is a Janome. So she's had it for about 10 years. She collects old sewing machines, so we have all sorts of different sewing machines. But some of the things along with it, she mentioned the speed control. That has been great for teaching our children how to sew, or me. You know, that way we're not going too fast for even her instruction. She can slow it down to where we're watching, able to see what we're doing with it as well.
And then you can put that back on and just open it and keep some stuff in there. If you don't have anything to store in there, I've seen people store M&Ms in there while they're sewing, and they just open it up and they leave it open while they're sewing and they can eat their snacks. I don't do that, but people have done that. And there's also some lines on here. This is where you would put your edge of your fabric to see how big your seam's gonna be. So most machines will have a 1/4 inch line. My 1/4 inch line falls on the other side of the feed dog, so it doesn't have a line. But you can see some of the numbers on here. There's like a 1/2 inch mark and 2 1/8 mark. It just depends on how wide you want your seam. When you sew, 90% of your projects will have a 1/4 inch seam. So there's also other buttons on machines. This machine does have an up and down needle button. So you just push it and the needle goes down. You push it back and the needle will go up. This button is for buttonholes when you're making a buttonhole on your machine. You can buy machines with 100 buttons, or you can buy machines with 3 buttons. It just depends on how much you want to spend on it. And this, I don't know if I showed you, but this is your hand wheel. This will turn your needle up and down by hand. So that's the basic machine parts. If you have any questions, or you have a question about your machine on what something is, just let me know and I can try to answer it. Or if you have any questions about this machine, I can try to answer that. Just let me know if you have anything. Comment, say hi if you're there. And that's all I have for now. Have a good night.